As you go through and you listen to me read this aloud, what I want you to do is I want you to focus on the fact that when we're reading text for information, such as social science, social studies, in ancient history or history for that matter, uh, the people who publish these books put these images in here and these different maps because it helps you better understand what it is you're looking at. So let me go through this fairly quickly. We'll talk about how to look at this in our first little video. And I'll go through the next videos after this, and I'll read through the text, and we'll have you answer a few questions as you go through and watch this particular video. This is really short text, and best way to go through this first before you actually do any reading is just look at the headings and look at the pictures and see what it is that you're going to be learning about. So this is lesson 2. Our main ideas in science and technology are new techniques supported in agricultural revolution. So if you don't know what that is, well, you're going to be reading about it. And you'll know more information about this when you get finished. Culture. Agriculture made a big change in how people lived, which is a huge change, and it actually has a lot to do with how people live today. Geography. Farming developed independently in many areas of the world. Okay, so that's basically what we're going to be taking a look at. We've got this image here. You always read the caption underneath. Find out why it is that they have a picture of this. There's a reason for it. It's from Hungary, and it's holding a tool, a sickle, which is used to harvest grain. It's a farming tool. And this figure represents a deity or a god, and it dates back to about 4,500 BC. So this statue here it took 4,500 years to get up to the year 0, counting backwards. And if this is 2017, then this statue is it's over 6,500 years old. So it kind of puts things into perspective when you look at it. Go through and read the headings. Learning to farm and raise animals. Build on what you know. Terms that you're going to need to know. Up here, up top, and you're going to see those highlighted in yellow. Beginnings of agriculture. Okay. Climate changes. Notice they put them in red so that they stand out. There's a vocabulary word highlighted in yellow. Connected today. Peru. This is Peru, the picture. A shepherd tends her sheep in the Andes Mountains of Peru. Sheep were among the first animals that humans learned to domesticate. Think about some other animals that are domesticated, like cows, goats, pigs, chickens, horses. The domestication of animals, the agricultural revolution, so here you go. If you didn't know what it was before, we'll soon find out. Domestication of plants and animals 5,000 BC to 500 BC. So you're looking at about 7,000 years ago. And this is us here in San Francisco over here. You go south into Mexico and then Central America and then South America down here. And you can look at the different types of things that are being domesticated, crops and animals. Settlements begin. Farming villages develop. Notice I'm not even reading any of the text yet besides the headings. And then here we go. Here's 5,000 BC in the dark green, so that's 7,000 years ago. 3,000 BC in the medium green, which is going to be this area over here, which will be about 5,000 years ago. And then here is going to be the lighter green, will be about nearly 3,000 years ago, well, 2,500. You have Africa here, and we spread north up into here, Saudi Arabia, and we spread it to the Eastern European countries, the Western European countries, north into the Nordics, east into Asia, China, Southeast Asia, India, and then down into further Southeast Asia as we go down further south. You'll notice what geographic, I'll get rid of this thing. What geographic feature favored the development of agriculture before 5,000 BC? Well, you use your map skills in order to answer that question. Geographic feature favored the development of agriculture before 5000 BC. Well, you can look at the map and you can think about it. You can go and dig deeper by reading the text. You're probably going to want to think about how to answer that question. Farming develops in many places. River valleys in Africa and Asia. A river valley. Well, I know that as rivers flow down the mountains, the water starts to carve canyons, and the longer a canyon exists, the more water erodes, and then eventually valleys are formed by the rivers. And I know that soil gets deposited into those valleys, really fertile soil, and I know that it makes for really good growing of crops. So river valleys in Africa and Asia, so I'm probably thinking that this part right here is going to be about how these river valleys were the first places that people started to actually grow their own food. Uplands in the uplands. I have to read a little bit more about that. In the lesson summary here, these are the 3 bullet points that you're going to need to know most. These are the 3 most important things that you need to know for the entire reading. And why it matters now. Why bother to study this stuff that happened a long time ago? Well, it's because it still makes a difference today. We actually still live in very similar ways. So it helps us to better understand the world around us. You finally go through here. You could even do a little backwards thinking, read through the questions, and think about where you might find the information in order to answer these different questions, and then go from there. In the next video, I'll start reading from the top. All right, in this next video, I'll talk a little bit about taking notes. Taking notes, reading skill, understand cause and effect. Identifying causes and effects will help you understand the relationships among events in this lesson. In lesson 2, look for the effects of the cause listed in the chart below. Record them in a chart of your own. So in your social studies notebooks, you can open up to the next blank page, put today's date on it, and then make a chart similar to this. At the top, write cause. Next to it, write effects. Draw a line, 1, 2, 3. Leave more space here so that you can take more notes. But the cause, the agricultural revolution, causes changes in tools for growing and harvesting grain. Causes changes in tools for growing and harvesting grain. So think about it for a moment and realize that before people started growing their own crops and raising their own animals for food, they were out hunting and gathering. So think about the types of tools that you would need in order to hunt, and think about the tools that you would need in order to farm, and how are they different. So what is the cause of the agricultural revolution that created these changes in the tools, and how are people affected by that? How are the changes in tools for growing and harvesting grain affected people? Moving on. So our last video we talked about taking notes, cause and effects, taking a look at this and finding out what the effects are. Now, this is something that you're going to want to be doing when you are reading through the text with me. These are the California standards. They're kind of complicated jargon, but this is basically the standards that this lesson covers for this particular information. Locations of human communities that populated the major regions of the world, and describe how humans adapted to a variety of environments, climactic changes and human modifications of the physical environment that gave rise to the domestication of plants and animals, and new sources of clothing and shelter. Basically what that means is that the climate changed, kind of similar to what we're going through now, and that gave it the possibility for humans to start raising plants and animals in order to provide food for themselves, make clothing, and shelter as well. And this is about where did the people start doing that? When did that first start happening? and how did people get that information out to other people in other areas. So the first topic is learning to farm and raise animals. Build on what you know. In the United States today, few people are farmers. However, in early human societies, almost everyone was a farmer. Today, because of technology, one farmer can raise enough food to feed many people. The beginnings of agriculture. First question. The essential question for this particular passage here is, what new farming tools and methods did early farmers invent? Okay, so there's probably we're going to get an answer to how things changed between hunting and gathering and the agricultural revolution. Early humans were nomadic. They moved around in search of food. So if you don't know what nomadic is, you can use a tool you can read on, and you'll say, oh, people who are nomadic moved around in search of food. By around 8,000 BC, that's about 10,000 years ago, they had learned to modify the environment, that means change it, by growing plants and raising animals. Climate changes. Global warming resulted in the retreat of the Ice Age glaciers. So what that means is that the glaciers started to melt. This retreat meant that early humans could move into new areas. As temperatures rose, the growing season became longer. Wild grasses spread and were domesticated by humans. Domesticated means humans learned to grow and tend the grasses. This skill provided humans and grazing animals with more grain to eat. And here's a good spot where you can connect to today. A shepherd tends her sheep in the Andes Mountains of Peru. Sheep were among the first animals that humans learned to domesticate. So you see these tall mountains, probably the snow rarely ever melts up on the top, because this, in the Andes, this is upwards of more than 13,000 feet up in elevation, if not more. And these grasses down here where the sheep are grazing in order to survive.